I figure it like this. The average cost of college is what, $20,000 a year? Now, according to these estimates that I got off the web, you can pass those around, someone with no education beyond high school can expect to make about $20,000 a year in the current job market. Now that being said, over the next 4 years, you could either spend $80,000 or I could make $80,000.
So the university education is worth the money is the point of that movie clip. Students are complaining now that tuition cost has gone up and they're going to have to work more hours in order to pay off their costs. Alistair Woods joins me now. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, costs go up. What's the problem?
Well, costs do go up, but comparison to the 1970s to now, the costs have actually gone up at 3 times the rate of inflation. What that means is that if we had just let the costs go up at the rate of inflation, students would only be paying in Ontario around $2,500. Instead, they're paying $7,000, and that's because the government has divested over the last 10 to 20 years and asked students and their families to pick up the bill.
Okay, well, who should pick up the bill? I mean, taxpayers are picking up the majority of the bill. That's still the case.
No, not anymore. In Ontario, for example, most universities, their operating budgets, it's almost just over 50% or over 50% is now provided through private tuition dollars, whether that be through money directly contributed by students or through loans that are given to students through banks or public assistance.
And you think that the taxpayers are only paying half of the cost to run the university and all of the expenses involved in running the university and giving you an education?
Well, that is the reality, is the fact that the government of Ontario now calls universities and colleges publicly assisted institutions of post-secondary education because they know that the majority of these, their budgets are derived from private tuition dollars contributed by students and their families.
All right, but you should contribute.
Well, we think that students in Ontario, for example, pay the highest tuition fees in the country, but we study in the largest class sizes, we have the fewest teachers, and actually Ontario gives the least per student to institutions to fund college and university education. We believe very strongly that higher education is a public good, that everyone benefits from a strongly educated workforce, and that we think tuition fees are much too high and unreasonably high for students right now.
Are you in school right now?
Just graduated from York University.
From?
York University.
York University. With debt?
Yes.
Okay, how much?
Almost around $20,000.
Okay, and you expect to earn, or do you have a job?
Well, right now, as the chairperson of the Canadian Federation of Students, it's a 1-year full-time position, yes.
All right, $20,000, graduating with a university education to go out into the marketplace doesn't seem an onerous debt. And if it's only a few $1,000s a year, how did you build up that much debt?
Well, I actually had to take
a private... Did you not work during the summer?
I did, actually, and that's the point of this news story. Right now, we're seeing that in order to pay just the base cost of your tuition fees, a student in Ontario today would have to work over 700 hours at full-time at minimum wage, whereas
you do most of that in the summer. What are you whining about?
In 1975, it was only about 200 hours to actually cover that cost. What we're trying to say
is that things have gotten more expensive.
Things have gotten more expensive, but they've gotten unreasonably more expensive because the government has divested from public education.
Yeah. Do you want to care would you want to compare what you could make in the marketplace today to what somebody made in 1971?
Well, actually, what we're concerned about is that students can't make any money in the marketplace because there are no jobs.
Well,
there are 6 job vacancies for every 6 unemployed people for every job vacancy in the country.
What's your degree in?
My degree is in political science and development studies.
Is there no job for that?
Well, there are no jobs right now for students in general.
Did you think about that before you went?
We're seeing that students are graduating with record levels of student debt, $37,000 for the completion of a 4-year degree for students who do take on debt. Of those students, we are having some of the highest youth unemployment rates on record. And students are finding it more difficult to find jobs that are beyond being baristas or working at the mall. The reality is that there are 6 unemployed people for every job vacancy in this country. That's Statistics Canada. That means that there's a lack of jobs. It's not a skills mismatch. It's not that students don't have the ability to work and to earn money. It's that those opportunities aren't afforded to them.
Okay, those opportunities should not be a surprise. That lack of opportunity. I mean, that's something university students ought to know. And if you're going to go into university, you either go in and you get a degree in something that's highly marketable, or you deal with being a barista. That's not my problem as a taxpayer to solve.
Yeah, but I think what we need to think about is the long-term planning of this, right? We need students who excel in all fields, whether it be engineering, teaching, social sciences.
Apparently we don't, or we'd be hiring you all.
Well, we're seeing now that, for example, because of the government lack of planning, 10 years ago, we said everyone should be a teacher, and now apparently there are too many teachers. Are we going to funnel students into the sciences to what's profitable now, only for 10, 20 years down the road for those jobs to be outsourced and say, well, that's your fault? We actually need to have a longer-term plan about how we're going to connect young people with jobs and make life more affordable for young people. At the end of the day, the economic future of this country and this province rests in the hands of the very people right now who are struggling, and that's young people.
All right, so you say 600 hours at minimum wage would pay for your tuition.
About just a bit more than 700 hours.
Okay, and how many of those hours could you do during the 4-month summer break?
Well, if you're doing full-time, it's probably, I would imagine, well, it's 18 weeks. So the summer break, 4 months, 4 weeks each way. So you're probably just near the cusp of that there.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, you also have to remember that this is just to cover the base cost of your tuition. But when you're working, you still have bills to pay. People have transit passes, they have cars, they pay rent, they buy groceries, and all of that gets deducted, inevitably lengthening the amount of time they're going to need to work to pay off their tuition fees or the debt that they've incurred by going to school.
Canadian students get an incredible break on university as compared, say, to American students or students in some other countries. And to me, it's unattractive that we get all this whining about it. If it takes 700 hours of work, then do the 700 hours of work.
There's absolutely...
And graduate debt-free, which, by the way, is a good thing to do.
You're really comparing apples and oranges, right? The costs for education in the United States, the really inflated costs are often for private colleges. And just like you can say, we're whining because we're complaining about America, we could also say, why don't we look to places like Germany, Sweden, Norway, where tuition fees have been free. In fact, Germany just repealed tuition fees for the second time.
Yeah,
so
do you think youth unemployment is better there?
Well,
it's actually not.
In Scandinavian
because what you
countries,
get for nothing is good for nothing. You have to put something in. You have to put some skin in the game.
Yeah, and people do put skin in the game. That's called the income tax system. We pay income taxes so that we can have services like elementary school, like high school.
No, you haven't put anything into the system.
Yeah, I do pay income taxes. I do pay income taxes, and I pay taxes just like anybody else in this province and in this country. So of course I've put money into the system, and it's ridiculous that you would assume that I don't.
No, you just when you're in university and working, you are taking from the system. You are benefiting from the system. You may pay taxes later, great, but the education is of more value to you personally than it is to the rest of us.
To a student who is working during their college or university education, they're contributing. Their parents have also been contributing, and then they will contribute continue to contribute after they get a job. Most students today don't just sit around and go through their degree without working. Most students have to work often multiple part-time jobs. And with those jobs, they pay taxes into a system, and they expect a delivery of services into those things. You wouldn't say to a high school student that you should pay for the entire cost of your high school degree just because you don't start working until you're 14, 15,
No, there's
or 16.
a reason for that. Because we're going to get people up to a high school level so that they can do something to support themselves. It's a self-defense mechanism for society. But when you go for a university degree, you're doing it because you expect to earn more money. That's valuable to you.
It used to be that a high school education was not for free. You had to pay for it. Then we realized that it was a bare minimum standard to get a decent job or to get the opportunity to do a decent job, and so we removed those fees. Today in Ontario, 75% of newly posted jobs require you finish college or university education, and so we're nearing that cusp too, and we need to think about how we can make education more affordable for college and university students, just like we decided to do it for high school students, and rightly so.
I hope the future is run by the people who aren't self-entitled. That's what I'm hoping for.
Well,
but thanks for coming by, because we're out of time. We actually went over time. Thank you very much.